In this demo I will demonstrate how to install a Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7. I have just booted my virtual machine from the installation DVD. What you can see here is the default options that are presented from the boot menu on the installation DVD. By default it will use test this media and install Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7, but testing the media just takes a lot of time. So normally you would want to use install Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7. If for any reason install Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 doesn't work, you can also go to troubleshooting. If you select it and enter, you can see that there are some advanced installation options, of which install Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 in basic graphics mode is probably the most interesting. But I'm not going to use them here, so I select return to main menu and install Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7. Now this takes a while for my system to get started. When the installation program has been loaded, it's gonna ask you some questions. First of them is the language that you want to use. In this course I'm using English, which is English language with an English keyboard. So I just keep it like that and I click continue. Next there's the installation summary. In the installation summary there's a couple of things we need to change. First, there's a software selection, which by default goes to a minimal installation. Minimal installation is fine, but you won't have much, and to get you started easily in this course, we want to change that. In here you can see the base environments, and the base environment we want to install is a server with a GUI. I know normal servers that sit in data centers typically don't have a GUI installed, but to learn how to work with Red Hat Enterprise Linux, it really is convenient to have a GUI installed. So just select server with GUI and then you click done. Now you need to wait a while the program updates, and you can see that the installation source is set to local media, which is good, and server selection is set to server with GUI, which is fine as well. Now the installation destination specifies where you want to install Red Hat Enterprise Linux. The default selection is that it's gonna use your entire hard disk to do that. And that's fine with me. I don't want to mess with partitioning right now. We'll cover that in a later chapter during this course. So from here just verify the options. You can see that it's gonna use SDA, which is the name of my hard disk, and it has 20 gigabytes available, and you can see that it's a VMware environment. Typically you will find some more details about your hard drive here. If you're happy with that, just click done. Next you can see the network and host name. It isn't red or anything, so you might be tempted to think that it's okay, but it's not, because by default the network is not connected, which isn't very useful because we're installing a server. So just click here to switch the network on. And you can see that my server has obtained an IP address from the DHCP server and all the other related information, like the default route and DNS. Of course you can change that, but we are not going to do that at this point. I will teach you later how to configure the network just the way you like. There's one thing I do need you to change, and that's the host name. Typically the host name is a complete DNS name that's not only the name of the host itself, but also includes the DNS domain name. As this is going to be a server that's not registered anywhere, I'm using example.com as the default DNS domain name for this server. Now that I've entered everything, I can click begin installation to start the installation. And you can see right here that it starts creating the file systems and everything I need to get myself working with this server. But still, there are some things to take care of. First of them is the root password. You probably know that root is the almighty system administrator. There's no limits whatsoever for root. So on a normal server you should be careful and select a password that really is kind of difficult to guess for people that don't know it. For this course I would like you to work with a simple password. So I'm typing just password here because this is a demo environment and we want to make it as easy as possible for you to work with this environment. So enter the password twice and you will see a warning here. the password you have provided is weak, and that is because the password fails the dictionary check. That's kind of obvious because password is in a dictionary, but I can use it anyway. I only have to click done twice. So now I'm done and I can go on and create a user. You might ask, is it necessary to create a user? Well, I think it is, because you don't want to be working as root all the time. So root has too many possibilities on the system and it's just too easy to break things. So if you just need to check something simple on a server, it is convenient if you have a user account. So I'm creating a user, Lisa, and I'm giving her the password of password again. If this user needs administrator privileges, you can select it here, but I'm not going to do that, and I will explain later why and which are the options that you can use to create administrator users. So I just click done, and again, to see that the system is still being installed. This will typically take 5 minutes or so, if your server is rapid enough, of course. If you're on older hardware, well, it might take considerably longer. So let's wait for that before we continue. So when all files have been copied, you can just click reboot to restart your server. And here you can see the boot menu. You don't have to do anything. It will start automatically, and it will take a minute or so before you're ready to get working with your server. As you can see here, there's one remaining task, and that is the license agreement. So click here to accept the license agreement. And here I accept the license agreement, and then you click done. And you can click finish configuration to finalize the configuration process. First step is kdump. Kdump is kind of a weird thing. It's a core dump kernel. In case your server crashes, it takes an image of server memory that can be analyzed later by a debugger. So the default is that kdump is started automatically, which takes 161 megabytes of RAM. You don't have to do it, so if you're tight on memory, just take it off by selecting enable kdump, because this is Linux and Linux doesn't crash often in general. You can always turn it on later manually. So click forward, and then it asks you that changing kdump settings requires rebooting. Would you like to continue with this change and reboot the system after first boot is complete? Yeah, let's do that. So it's gonna reboot once more, but it will do that later, and first you'll have the chance of finalizing your installation. Next, it asks if you want to register with Red Hat Network. So Red Hat Network requires a paid license. If you have a paid license, then you can select yes, I'd like to register now. Otherwise select no, I prefer to register at a later time, and click finish. It will reboot your server, and once rebooted you'll be ready to get working. So the first thing you see is this screen in which you can select the user account you want to use to log in with. So as I've created one user, which is Lisa, I can just click Lisa and enter the password, followed by sign in. This is a nice way of logging into a Red Hat Enterprise Linux system. So there we go. This is the graphical desktop. Because this is the first time I'm logging into the graphical desktop, there's a few more questions to answer. So I'm selecting the language first, and then the language of the input source, and then I click next because I don't want to connect this server to my existing data in the cloud, and my computer is ready for use. So I can click start using Red Hat Enterprise Linux Server. So here we go. The GNOME helper. GNOME is the graphical desktop that we're looking at right now. And if you want to get to know the graphical desktop a little bit more, you can click any of these items to get a short introduction. So feel free to do so if you want to, but I don't want to show you that. There's only one thing I want to show you. If you click right on the desktop, there's the option Open in Terminal. That is the most important option that you can find on the graphical desktop. Because on a Linux system, typically you will use from a terminal window to type commands that help you accomplishing anything you want to do on your server. So let's maximize this window, and there we go, we're all ready to rock and roll. So there's one more thing to take care of. At the moment I'm an ordinary user. As you can see here, Lisa has been logged into the server that's known as rel server, and the current directory is desktop. You can also see the $sign. This is the prompt that a normal user will typically get. If you want to become root, you can use su-. Enter the password of the user root. And you can see that at this moment we are root at rel server. The current directory is tilde, which is the home directory of this user. And there's a hash sign indicating that I'm root. So at this moment I am ready to start administering my Red Hat Enterprise Linux server.